I am indeed the publisher of Exterminating Angel Press, which is a press, small press, but we're very, very forward-moving, that publishes books of any subject, as long as it does what we call questions a dominant cultural story. In other words, we kind of think that the stories that we're telling over and over and over again aren't really working to move us on. The way I started it was we were living in Liverpool. Well, actually, we were commuting between Oregon and Liverpool, if you can believe that. So I set up a project in the neighborhood to get kids back into education through making their own television programs. And while I was there, one of the kids, not one I knew, but a 12-year-old was arrested for having run a drug ring of adults for 2 years since he was 10 years old. And the only reason he was arrested was his mother reported him missing 6 months after he stopped coming home. And at the time, because the project was being funded by ministers and by European money, I was in contact with a lot of people in the government. And every one of them I came in contact with, I said, do you guys know what you've done? I mean, think about this. Think about what skills this kid needed. 10 years old, he was running adults. He figured out how to go buy the drugs. He figured out how to sell them for a profit. He figured out how to get past you guys. He was running 8 adults, and you didn't catch him except his mother said this. Do you know what this kid would have been like if you had actually given this kid a decent education and actually given this kid decent things to do? Why? Why are we wasting these children, and why? Why is it that every project seems to start with the best intentions in the world, and the next thing you know, the people who started it are just trying to grab all the money and be on top and tell the neighborhood what to do? Why is that? It happens every time. It's always perfectly nice people that do that. So I went home and I really thought about it. And what the conclusion I came to was that we had these default settings, that all of us have these default settings, that when we get to a certain point, we have these cultural default settings which tell us what to do next. And my partners and I and everyone in the neighborhood and the government literally had no default setting to tell them what to do to turn things over to the neighborhood. They had no default setting to tell them what to do with a child like that. There was no story. So I thought, you know, it really is the story level that's the important thing. And now I will tell you why fairy tales are so important. We'll get to the wisdom of fairy tales thing, because fairy tales, what I also noticed when I was analyzing all of this stuff was that whatever is the most disregarded and most scorned thing in any culture tends to be the thing that you should look at for an answer to any problems the culture has got. And of course, fairy tales, children's books, in our culture, I mean, nobody pays any attention to them. The literature that we are told to think of as literature, from the New York Times, for example, tends to be books that describe what the person's experience is in the most beautiful way possible, but generally saying that everything's shit. Children's books do not say that. Children's books have never said that. Children's books, fairy tales, have never said that. What they have always talked about is issues of good and evil. Literature right now tends to say there is no issue of good and evil, it's all relative. This is not true. We all know this is not true. We all know that there is good, there is evil. Good is not picking on those who are weaker than you are, right? These are good things. Evil things are the opposite. There is no, there's no waffling about this. Fairy tales do not waffle about this. All fairy tales are about questions of good and evil. Where we've lost the plot is we think that it's more practical to be cynical. I don't think it is more practical. I think the higher morality is the higher practicality, and that's where all these books have come from. I was out walking my dogs behind the house. It was snowing, and propped up against my favorite tree, which is a very, very old tree that survived the logging of the turn of the 20th century, was a little package, book-sized package with odd stamps all over it, of the kind I've never seen before. And in the 18th century, it was a court thing in France. It was what you did to impress other people at court. You came up with a really cool fairy tale and you told it, and everybody, to the whole, everyone, to little kids, the king, everybody would sit around and listen to it. because they were really interested in these questions, which is really what, it's the only thing I'm interested in. What is right? What is wrong? What should we be doing? Who am I? Who are you? That's what I'm interested in. And that fact that we've gotten away from these questions, I think, is a really, is, in my opinion, the main reason we've gone off the rails as a culture.